shit, dude.
I just have 8 million windows open, or 8 million tabs, I guess.
No, I think this my laptop was recalled officially.
Uh, because they're exploding or some shit.
Yeah, they were like overheating and then frying the whole computer, but I just never did the recall. I was always just like, oh, fuck that. I mean,
Yeah.
and I don't really do anything that makes it blow up. Like, I basically use it for writing and like school shit.
Yeah.
What podcast is this, Soph?
This is Heavy Board. I'm Sophie Weiner.
I'm Andrew Wittstadt, and today we're discussing Stephen King's The Shining. Maybe you've heard of it. Maybe. What'd you think of this, Soph?
I mean, shit, I enjoyed it. I mean, we're gonna talk about what I think is like the longest and most boring chapter possibly ever written in a
Honestly,
pop novel.
yeah, I'm actually anxious to hear which one you say because I found a similar. There was this chapter where I felt the same way, and I wrote it down. So that'd
I
be
bet it's the same one.
yeah,
I
that would be
bet
funny.
anything it's the same one, man.
It's
It's really
probably
hard not to be bored during it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. It was weird. I felt I don't know. I brought this up to you when I started reading that I wasn't sure how much I was like projecting the characters from the film onto
I was
the
100%.
novel.
But like I'd never read the book. Like I had seen the movie before I read the book, so like I just couldn't help but do that.
But like as I kept reading, I kind of found, it's not that easy to do because the characters in the novel have far more depth. you know? I mean, it's a Stephen King novel. The characters aren't like super crazy, like masterful, deep characters. Well, we can argue about that. But
Sometimes, yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
I mean they have depth though. They're like, you know, not shells of characters intended for a horror film.
yeah, I mean a
Right?
book
Like
would
they have
be
like real
yeah.
personalities that are more complicated than those we see in the film.
Yeah, I mean a book would be boring as shit if you didn't get some type of depth. Like even like the worst character, like some of the worst in terms of popular fiction. I tried to read like a Grisham novel once, and to be fair, I've never heard of it before. I don't know if it was one of his more popular ones. So I think it was called The Guardians or something. And dude, I gave it 150 pages, and it was just so bland, and and it's not that he didn't have character development. Like there was some, but nowhere near what King does, and it just makes it such a bland experience.
Oh yeah, I mean, but like, can you imagine if Danny, the child character from the film, was the same in the novel, and how like painful to read those chapters would be?
You mean like yeah, the way they make him dead as shit, like creepy in the movie? Yeah,
Yeah, he's like not a real kid.
right.
He's just like a creepy like stand-in,
And they do. I mean, I guess you don't have to, but they do. They don't show him like reading his parents' thoughts as much, which you could do easily in a movie with like 20-second scene or something. Like
Yeah.
show him just like reading their thoughts and them not. I don't know. But yeah, I guess we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. But yeah, general thoughts. I mean, I liked it. I don't think it's. I mean, I guess because I saw the movie beforehand, so it's not like I was like riveted by this. Oh, how's it gonna end? Like I knew how it ended, even though the endings are different a little bit. But it's like I don't know. My favorite King book is Pet Cemetery. I think that's one of his best, if not his best. But the movies all suck of that. But the book is really good. But like, yeah, I guess King doesn't really need an introduction. We didn't even really introduce the fucking author. But like,
Yeah, he's Stephen King. He's
yeah,
creepy looking as shit.
one of the things that I actually
Ugly
wanted,
dude.
one of my questions I had, dude, was like, just yeah, because he's somebody that is just so well known. I mean, he's literally one of the best-selling authors to ever live. It's like him and like J.K. Rowling or whatever. Like, I was gonna ask you, would you call King the most influential writer to ever live?
I don't know. I don't know, because I don't think that like most people out there trying to write right now are trying to write like Stephen King.
Whoa.
I mean, I guess that's arguable. I don't know. I don't know the fiction side of the world as well as you might.
Well, I mean, everything is fractured into like niche genres now, but
I
I just
would
mean, yeah, go ahead.
argue his popularity over his influence. Maybe
Well,
influence in terms of like the horror genre.
right. I just mean, yeah, I mean, he's one of the most famous to ever live for sure. I mean, people all over the world would recognize. That's one of the things I noticed. Like his name on my copy. I guess we didn't even talk about the copies yet, which edition we read. And there's, I mean, with a book like this, I mean, you're talking hundreds of different printings. Like, but his name is bigger on the cover than like the title of the book. Yeah, like
Oh yeah.
so. I just
It's huge
the reason I
compared to
thought of
that.
it, yeah, exactly, yeah,
Big as shit and bold.
and we have two completely different copies. I have Hodder. I think it's one of his British publishing houses. Hodder, like iconic Terra paperback. I got a 2-pack out of it actually because I got The Shining and Doctor Sleep, the sequel to this, which I'm in the middle of now. But I couldn't resist buying the 2-pack. What did you got,
Yeah,
Seth?
I got the Anchor Books Mass Market Edition 2012.
2012. Yeah, that's what I mean. So like even like
I think
10
maybe
years.
this one just like went out of print and they're putting out like a newer mass market now.
Well, that's the thing,
That you
dude. I
probably
mean,
get for $5.
we'll link both. Well, I guess yeah, they don't have it. We'll just link the mass market in
Yeah,
in
we'll
this
link
version.
whatever that seems the most affordable,
Yeah, I
most
mean,
reasonable.
I'll just link both, whatever we read, for people can look at it, whatever. Like they can pick whichever one if they if you want to fucking buy it at all, or you just want to look at it. Although we do encourage you to add all these books to your library, like we do, but
Yeah,
so
no, I mean, this was a fun, fast read for like, a 600 plus page novel. At least my copy is 600 plus pages. I don't know
yeah,
about yours.
mine was about 500, just under
Yeah,
500.
yeah, I got that shittier,
Well,
smaller copy.
the mass market
But yeah.
paperbacks, yeah. It's funny. He's one of the only authors to still get mass market paperbacks.
Yeah, I guess people buy them,
Well, they
you
only
know.
buy his. Really, they buy like 4 authors. But the reason I asked that, I started thinking about this. Like, this was after I'd read the book, and then after I watched the movie, I started thinking. I was like, "Damn, is he the most influential writer to ever live?" Like, and I mean that in a way like I've heard almost every contemporary writer I've ever met, I've ever listened to an interview with, I've ever just had a fucking conversation with, like in hallways or whatever, conferences. At some point in their life, Stephen King was a very important figure to them. You know what I mean? Like at some point, whether they were teenagers, whether they discovered it later in life, like you read a Stephen King novel and you fucking loved it. Like, and it fucking blew your hair back, you know? And you were like, whoa, this is fucking wild. Like, and I just think that I don't, he's still alive, so it's so hard to determine, you know? But I mean, obviously, yes, I think it's safe to say he changed the horror genre forever if we're doing genre fiction. But like, I think it's more than that because everybody kind of likes horror.
Yeah, I think
But
I'm just so like I'm so much closer to like MFA world that kind of tends to reject um
that's the thing
certain
too.
kinds of certain kinds of popular writing, although mine didn't really for the most part. Um,
I mean,
but
it
I wasn't on the
depended.
fiction side.
Yeah, it depended. Some people did, but even those that like were like, "Oh, screw popular fiction," they had read Stephen King when they were like and like loved it when they were kids. Okay,
Yeah, I
like
feel like everyone in my program was imitating like, some really niche contemporary writer or they were trying to be the next Raymond Carver,
yeah, and I mean that's common.
you know?
That's everybody
So
tries. Yeah,
that's why I say like, oh, I think like when it comes to like MFA writers, I'm
Right.
not sure, but that's the only side of the house I really know.
Right. Well, I just mean dude, I think even I just mean even people that do reject it now and only want to do or only want to read or only want to create literary kind of stuff, they were still influenced by him. Like you can't. It's one
Oh
of those
yeah,
things
this
where
is
he's
so much
so
fun.
yeah, well, not even that. Like he's just so huge, and not just his books. Even if you didn't read his books, that's the other thing, dude. I think
Oh
what I
yeah,
want to
you
get
know
to
his
later.
movies.
That's what I mean. Like he's just had such an impact on like the story creation in our culture that there's just nothing else comes close to what he
Yeah,
did.
he's a
Like,
prolific storyteller.
right. But I mean,
Mhm.
sure, there's plenty of those, but it's like Dean Koontz is prolific as fuck. I've never even read it, but I mean, this guy, I think he's another one of the most sold authors to ever live. But he's like, you don't see his stuff. I mean, it sells very well. I mean, obviously, all these, these are top one percenters, no doubt. Like top 1% of 1% in the literary world or the writing world. But like, he doesn't have the same impact on our culture that King did. Like King just had this huge impact. Still does, because I mean now every time he makes something, they're just putting it out like as a story, a movie, whatever
Oh
series.
yeah. I mean, think about how many editions
I
he
mean, yeah,
goes through
in
per book.
his little bio in the book that I'm sure everybody already knows, I think it says he sold over 350 million copies worldwide, not just of this book but all his books. I think he's published over 60. He's old now. I think he's almost in his 70s. But that, I mean, not only that a feat itself, but I mean, I just feel like even if people don't want to admit it, like Stephen King has affected your life. Like he has influenced you as a creative. He has influenced you somehow because he's just basically been a sledgehammer to the culture since the 70s, whenever that Carrie came out. But I do want to, yeah, we would talk about the movies and like the adaptations. I have another question about that, like what we think those did. You know,
Oh yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I think those did a lot,
Well,
but we
oh
can
yeah.
talk
I mean,
about that.
I would argue they did everything.
I mean, you want to sort of give a breakdown for anyone who doesn't know, like what sort of the book is?
Yeah, as simple as it can be. I mean, basically, this family goes to a hotel and they're meant to be like the caretaker for the winter season, which is a great setup in itself, man. I mean, that's just a great setup for a horror novel, like a big ass
Yeah.
empty old hotel, like
And this is like, okay, so like this is Jack Torrance's last sort of stab at like a job that he's getting from his friend after getting fired for like being a shit to some kid at the school he was teaching at. So him and his wife and their creepy kid who like reads minds essentially and can see the future goes to this creepy hotel to take care of it for the winter because it shuts down and has no guests for like 9 months or something crazy.
it's like
6 months.
6 months, yeah.
No.
Which would be like an extended winter season in some place that gets a lot of snow, I guess. Yeah, and then basically the hotel starts to like consume the people.
Yeah, it's like the hotel is basically like some kind of evil thing.
Well, that's what I mean, dude. Like we're sitting here like everybody knows this. Even if you haven't seen the movie
Yeah.
or read the book, you know what The Shining is about, basically, just because King has been such an influence on our culture. I mean, just
Yeah, and if you don't know The Shining, like the title comes from this phrase that we get from like our one black character, Dick Halloran, and tells the kid Danny that he's like, yeah, you can shine. You have the shining. Basically, he can see into the future and see into people's minds.
yeah. I remember you texted me saying, yeah, Halloran was probably the most well written character in the
Yeah, and
book.
maybe that's why he was so well cast, just because he was like so clearly written.
Right. And like how charming he was, like how funny. Lots of
Yeah, he
cigarette.
was good.
Yeah, lots of cigarette smoking indoors.
So much cigarette smoking indoors and on airplanes. When that came in, I was like, oh shit.
Oh God,
Smoking sections on airplanes.
that's what they took from us, dude.
It's wild.
Bring back smoking sections on airplanes. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess one of my questions would be about the characters. I think a lot of my questions might be born out of my like, you know, whatever already sort of I had in my head about the movie and how I'm comparing it in my head, like as I read. But I was asking myself at the beginning, like, are we supposed to like Jack Torrance?
It's a good question. I think no. I don't think we are supposed to like him. Although I think there are parts of the book where I think he intentionally tries to create some sympathy for him, which is needed to create kind of more of a tragedy, I guess. But yeah, because right away we start learning about alcoholism, so like right away that's like an unlikable thing if you're like looking for a character to like.
Yeah, he like broke his kid's arm by accident.
Right. He had some type of outburst at like a student at the former school he taught at.
Yeah, like a violent outburst.
Right. Kid slashed his tires or whatever, and and he's kind of elusive about that, like kind of what caused it. Like, I guess they do tell us eventually that like yeah, he was like screwing this kid over or whatever in the debate club or something.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
Wendy, I think, was, a much more interesting character. I mean, she's not like in herself like sort of an interesting character. I wouldn't describe her that way necessarily, but she is a much more likable character in the book than in the movie.
Yeah, she's like, and I wonder if, yeah, I would also say like in the movie it's like it's she's a lot stronger in the book.
Yeah, well, that's famously what King hated about
Yeah.
um, the way she was written in the movie was that she was like passive, and he thought it was really misogynistic.
Yeah, supposedly King didn't like anything about the movie. He didn't like Nicholson as Jack. He didn't like the changes, all that kind of stuff.
See, like Jack Nicholson was great in it. Like
Yeah, he
he's so great.
was. Yeah, he was.
But he's so like hateable from the outset. Like
Yeah,
we know instantly that we hate him, and I don't know that that's true with the novel.
right. Yeah,
Wendy I hated kind of instantly in the movie.
it's just yeah. Shelley Duvall's kind of off-putting.
Well, yeah, and all she does is like weep and ignore the fact that her husband's an asshole.
Yeah,
Like that's the bulk of her character from what I remember of the movie. There were some famous lines I was kind of waiting for that never occurred, and I was like, oh shit, all right.
I thought about that. Yeah, yeah. I wonder. I was
Eh,
waiting for the take your medicine. It seemed like
Yeah,
that could have been perfect to throw in at one point. Just throw us a little take your medicine line for like
yeah,
listeners. Like the thing that keeps reoccurring in King's style, he does this uh, where he does a parenthetical in between a paragraph or like a sentence where he tells you what the character is actually thinking versus what's being written down, kind of thing. Uh, and this like reoccurring thoughts, all that kind of stuff. He uses the parenthetical kind of all over the place, but it is one of his kind of quirks. Is that it's one of his like stylistic trademarks, I would say. Uh,
yeah. And one of them is about taking your medicine. Like Jack keeps saying, I'm gonna make you take
right,
your medicine to various characters. And we like find out that that's actually like from his father, like his abusive dad, who was also a drunk.
right. And yeah, you think they could have just thrown that in there when he like any one of the scenes where he's going crazy.
But yeah, I thought Wendy far less annoying. I hated Jack a lot less. I sympathized with him a little bit more in the middle, even though I could tell that I wasn't quite supposed to like him, you know?
Yeah,
But there but there's a sentence from one of Halloran's chapters. So like every chapter we should probably mention is in from the perspective of a different character. So it cycles through Danny, Wendy, and Jack over and over again. And then toward the end, we start to get Dick Halloran too.
yeah, which is a typical kind of structure for kind of the gothic
Yeah.
novel structure. And King uses that in almost all of his stuff. Like, because I mean, it's just a good way to tell a story in third person, I guess.
Yeah. And toward the end of chapter 49, um, in the narration, it says he was drowning in instinct. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is the novel in a sentence. He was drowning in instinct.
That's a good one, yeah. So I mean, there are moments of real greatness.
But I guess to me, that like, if this had to be like about something other than sort of the horror, you know, sort of tropes behind it and the idea of this creepy hotel that's evil was like this idea of like some weird ultra human instinct.
Which is what kind of The Shining is, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
like, yeah, like they call it, like a sixth sense or something. Like it's funny. I'm reading the sequel to this now, and obviously this novel came out. This novel came out in what, 77? I think is when it originally was published.
Has to be.
A movie came out in 1980, and then the sequel came out much more recently. It was like 40 years later, but since The Sixth Sense had come out, like he makes a reference to it in like the sequel, and like they're talking about like the shine, that like the kids have, and I'm just like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You can do that
Yeah,
now
but
because he influenced everybody so fucking much. But
yeah, even the characters though that don't like that can't read minds and shit though, like it seems like that's the constant struggle that they're in, their instinct like versus their logic or something. Right? Like we see that with Wendy when she's like trying to decide, like whether to leave the room to check if Jack is still locked in the, food closet or whatever. We see it with Jack when he's when he's essentially when he's going crazy. In every scene where Jack is starting to go crazy, which I would say starts like surprisingly late in the novel. Like I would say I didn't like know he was going crazy until about halfway through.
yeah, it's much more subtle in the novel the way it's well, and because it's you
Well,
get
but
the
then all of a sudden it's definitely not,
well, yeah,
right?
you get the
Like
you get the
about halfway through
yeah,
he's just like the so one of the sort of big things in the movie is like that hedge maze, that big, winding hedge maze that doesn't exist in the novel, but
right.
you do have like these hedge animals that like come to life to protect the hotel, or like try to attack, the caretaker and his family. And yeah, it was there. It was that it was when he was like trimming these animal hedges, these goofy ass animal hedges, which like I can understand why that wouldn't work in the movie,
As I
you
say,
know.
just for cost, like the amount of like CGI you would need to make hedges
Also just
move.
imagine like a moving bunny,
Right. Yeah, it's not that.
bunny hedge. Like how terrifying is that actually? Or like I even one of the scenes that was kind of comical to me was like toward the end. So when Dick Halloran, who's like, I guess what is he? Is he the caretaker or like the chef during the like, during the season
Yeah, he's the
when the
chef.
hotel's
Yeah.
running? Um, Danny calls for him because they're in trouble, and he comes back, And like on his way back, he's like fighting this hedge lion
Right.
that's like beating him to death, essentially. Like while he's trying to like, get back to the hotel on the snowmobile. And like I was kind of laughing, you
Yeah.
know. So I was like I was picturing it and I was like, there's no way to make this actually look scary,
Right.
you know? It just seems kind of goofy.
Yeah, I thought that like making it a hedge maze. At first I was like, what the fuck? But then I was like, okay, that is like kind of a practical adaptation thing. It's like, all right, we can't do the hedge animals visually.
Yeah,
What can we
visually, a
do?
maze is it's much scarier, I
Right.
think.
It was a good adaptation thing. Fun fact from what I know about this, yeah, King had first draft rights when the movie rights were sold. Did the first draft of the script, and then supposedly like they just rejected it, they just hated it, and like Kubrick and that what's her name? I forget her name, and I just watched the movie recently, and it flashed up in front of me, and they anyway this yeah they rewrote the whole thing, and like
Yeah, I wonder what that movie would have been,
I
although,
I
you
will
know.
say it's not always the best when writers get to adapt their own book. King's stuff that he's been able to adapt himself is kind of notoriously always not as good as when he has nothing to do with it and people just take the material and like
Well, he
do
probably keeps
something.
it like a little too close to the novel.
I think that like I watched Pets. I hate to keep bringing up a book we didn't read this week, but yeah, like in Pet Cemetery, I watched the original version of that, and he did the screenplay for that one, and it is just so corny. Like it might be the direction too. It's not always his fault.
Also,
Like,
some things like can
but
fly in novels that just can't in a movie,
right,
you know? It just doesn't play well visually or it doesn't sound as natural in actual dialogue that happens out loud,
it's kind of the
you
same thing.
know?
He does like to have this trope of like a wise older person sometimes, like hollering in this novel, and then there's a character in Pet Cemetery. I can't even think of his name, but like the old guy in that, who's like the wise older character who's trying to help whoever is like suffering, like the main characters in the novel, and uh, that was just they didn't do a good job of putting that on the screen, and it was bad. And the remake, I think John Lithgow played it, and he did a better job, but it was still it wasn't good. Jed, I think his name was Judd. Judd, yeah, that was his name. The old guy in Pets. Anyway, yeah, I'm getting off topic with different fucking book. But yeah,
Yeah. Certain things that were adapted for the movie, though, like I'm finding myself questioning more now, you know? Like Danny's character. I mean, definitely Wendy's character. Like she
yeah,
didn't need to be like a sniveling kind of dumb bitch. You know?
yeah. I will
She
say
didn't have to be that.
I will say what they did with Danny's character did make him scarier.
It did make him
Yeah,
scarier, but we also didn't get as much insight into his character in any
right.
way.
We got
Like,
almost
I feel like
zero.
that, yeah, I feel like that could have been done, but I guess, if you're trying to keep it like mysterious and they really kept like Jack as the focus of the movie, like we were really mostly in his POV, except a few times we were in Danny's.
Right. Mostly on the trike or that little
Yeah.
big wheels in the
Yeah, but
movie,
Danny
but
sees like a lot more in the hotel, and the hotel is a lot more active than just Jack being a monster.
right. That's what a lot of people who didn't like the movie uh, criticized Kubrick for is that Nicholson and Jack's character in the movie went crazy too quickly. Like it's like they showed up and he was already crazy. Like as soon as they got there, and I get you're compressed for time. Like that movie's already like over two
Yeah,
hours.
I would say they kind of like made his crazy. It was like he was already kind of crazy in the movie. Like he had a sort of like intense kind of crazy feeling to him.
Right. And
And I
Nicholson
think
looks kind of crazy. Like just
and that's
generally,
yeah,
yeah.
like if they could have brought that down just the slightest notch,
Right.
and let it be slightly more gradual, I think that
That's
could have been good,
I think
but
that's what King criticized. He didn't like that casting because yeah, Nicholson was too hard or too aggressive or whatever.
yeah, we don't see as much of the he's like trying to be a loving father and
Right.
husband
And
side.
you don't believe it when with Nicholson's character. You don't believe it when it does happen.
Yeah.
But I also get, yeah, I mean, you have to put this into a movie. I mean, it's a 500-page novel. Like,
Well, yeah, and the point wasn't in the movie to actually like make him be like a good father. It was more to make us believe that he would turn out to definitely not be.
yeah, man, I did, I mean, other themes, yeah, obviously alcoholism, but honestly, in the book, like, family is a huge theme, and it's really not in the movie at all.
Yeah, marriage in particular.
Fatherhood, yeah, he constantly talking about his dad, the cycle of violence, like, or, domestic violence, uh, the cycle of alcoholism,
Yeah.
sins of the father type thing pushed onto the child. Classic thing in literature. I mean, you can point to, I mean, all the great epics that use that. But I'm thinking uh, Fences. I'm
Yeah.
thinking Death of a Salesman. I'm thinking like all the great stories we hold up, like just like sins of the father type dramas.
The thing that I did think, I already said like I really enjoyed the book. The thing that I thought King did really well, or one of the things that I thought he did really well, was write the child POV without making it boring,
Right.
without making it overly childlike, but keeping it believable as a child. Like obviously the narration isn't actually that of, a child's
Right.
voice, but like there are elements of it that make a lot of sense to me, like the way he capitalizes certain words to express that Danny doesn't actually understand the word but has some sense of what it might mean.
Yeah, and I think that is one of his strengths is he does write kids' perspectives very well. At times it is inconsistent, but you kind of forgive it for that one because usually you're hooked on the story, and two because it just flies so quickly. You're just like a little slip up here, and like it doesn't really on to the next kind of. You want to go to the next thing.
Yeah, so what do you think is the most boring chapter, Andy?
Uh, I thought it was that overlook history chapter with like the fucking
Hands
fifth.
down.
Yeah, with like the 15.
Terrible, terrible and long.
Yeah, and like the 15 news articles. Like I thought it was gonna end after like three, and then there was like three more. I was like, oh my god, these are so long.
Yeah, dude. And King's chapters are usually so short, and I was like, what the fuck even is this? Like, why are you writing all of these? Like, fine, write all of these fake news articles, but don't put them all in here. Like, we don't need all
Right.
of these.
That and I
Like, give
thought
us like a bunch of headlines, but stop making me read all these.
we needed like three. We needed the three that he references again as like ghosts later on in the novel, and the rest were just overkill. I was like, oh yeah, that's the prime example of his biggest weakness, which is he overwrites technically. And you see this with a lot of like popular fiction, what we would call popular fiction writers. They tend to overwrite a little bit. I mean, but that
I
was a
thought that I
yeah.
thought that too in the scene where he uh where he pulls Shelly's tits out of her shirt while Danny is sleeping.
Oh yeah.
I was like, does this like what is this doing? Like we already sort of got the sense of their closeness, you know? It's like, yeah, and then he like pulls her tits out of the wide V neck of her shirt.
I mean, everybody loves
Like,
tits, dude. Like,
yeah. Especially Stephen King.
yeah. Well, yeah.
It's
Why
fucking
not?
weird looking as shit.
Just throw in a little gratuitous nudity. It's a. I don't know. People
Yeah.
like a little
Little
sex.
nipple sucking.
Yeah, people like a little sex with their entertainment. This is why we cast. People that like if they're doing a biopic, we usually cast people that are way more attractive than like the actual person they're portraying. Or
Is there a scrapbook in the movie?
No, there's no Overlook history in the movie. There's no like direct reference to any of the news articles. There's not even much reference to the party, the 4th of July party,
Yeah.
until kind of
It's
very
way,
much
way
later.
more mysterious.
Yeah.
Movie is way more mysterious.
Yeah. The movie does, I mean, the movie does make the material like kind of scarier than.
Yeah. Like the way Jack sort of does become part of the hotel at the end with
Right.
like
That's
his
completely.
picture.
Yeah. The hotel doesn't blow up at the end is the biggest difference, I guess, right?
Yeah.
The boiler is non-existent in the movie. I mean, you have to do this when you're adapting a novel. You can't put every little detail. You have to, but you have to cut out wisely, you know. And then the biggest mistake I see with novel adaptations into movies is that, and this is something that like is very difficult to do. I mean, we tend to rely so heavily on the novel that we forget that like a viewer needs to be told information or something like that. Like I noticed this kind of in the later Harry Potter movies. Um, it's just a lot of it like because you're reading the book so much and you're adapting it. I'm sure. I mean, you know, you just overlook the fact that if you hadn't read the book, you wouldn't know anything about this little thing that's happening on screen, and that doesn't really tend to happen in this one. I mean, I think they did a decent job of that. You tend to get.
Yeah. We don't learn much of anything about Tony, the voice in Danny's head,
Yeah.
which is also much less mysterious in the book. Which like they hint at about halfway through again. Like they're really King is good at foreshadowing. Sometimes he hits it over the head, I think.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I think he lays it on too thick. Um, but we'll have like these repeated phrases or like these things that just, keep coming back.
Yeah.
These little motifs. I forgot what I was saying.
Yeah, me too. It's because I'm drinking though.
Oh yeah, but we like don't learn about Tony, right? Like in the movie it's just Danny like
He doesn't.
talking creepily to his finger.
Yeah, and that adds to the creepiness of the Danny character. But yeah, it's very different than what was in the book.
Yeah, and in the book it's like, oh, Tony is Danny from the future and like is trying to warn Danny, but we don't actually see that until the very end
Yeah.
because we don't know. It's like Danny's middle name is Anthony or something like that.
Yeah. Chapter 18 though is that fucking boring ass chapter, the scrapbook chapter. And I just
Which
wrote.
is like important because it triggers that whole like obsession with the history on Jack's
Right.
part. He's like, I'm gonna write this novel or this like nonfiction book.
He also throws a little shot at Poe in there, dude. Everybody likes to
Yeah.
throw shots at Poe. Says that was Poe, the great American hack.
Yeah.
That's Jack's perspective because Jack is trying to, striving to be a great writer. But yeah, when I started getting these news articles in chapter 18, I was like, okay. And then it kept going and kept going. And then I was like, all right, like we needed like 3 of these. We didn't need all like 17. And these better come back in the end if you're giving us all of these. And only like 2 of them do. And I was just like, ugh.
Yeah.
It is,
God,
yeah, I mean, that's what leads me to one of my questions I was going to ask you is, yeah, I mean, what separates what popular fiction from what we would call literary fiction? I mean, the age old question. I mean, what? I don't even know if we'll get an answer.
I think it's how much is sitting under the surface of the actual text.
All right.
Like there's a lot that can be like left unsaid in literary fiction. And I think a lot less gets left unsaid explicitly in pop fiction.
Honestly, that's a good way to
Like I
think
think
about
it's
it.
more sensational.
Yeah. It's a good way to think about it. I think we tend to think of them as like standards. like we would be like, oh, literary fiction is a higher standard or something.
Just higher brow.
Yeah, which we would imply,
Yeah.
better or
Yeah, I mean, God, it's yeah, I think it's probably just a matter of like depth, which isn't to say that this novel lacks depth. It's like fun, but again, like how much analysis would you really need to give to a book like this? Sort of unpack it, you know? Not a
right.
lot.
That's
It's
true.
not actually like for as much as happens in this book, it's not actually that complicated.
Yeah, of course. And honestly, I noticed that when I wrote down like a couple of the themes, which I didn't have many, I was like, yeah, this is not as dense. This compared to like when we did Wharton or somebody, dude, I had like half a page of just like themes that I listed off, like, and like it was, yeah. So I guess yeah, density is a good way to think about it, or surface level, or
Yeah. I mean, I think
complexity.
that's what it is. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I don't know.
But I mean, there are moments of like really nice writing in here.
Yeah, I mean, he's
I mean, sometimes it borders on like a little making a character feel a little bit pretentious, which I don't think is like that far off from what we need Jack Torrance to be. But um yeah, no, there were moments where I was like, that's a really lovely little bit right there.
yeah,
That was a really beautiful little phrase, you know?
yeah, and there's a lot of references to writers in this. Obviously, because the main character, Jack, is trying to be a writer. Very much a stand-in for King, I guess. I mean, he's a school teacher trying to be a writer. That was King's thing. He was a school teacher until he sold Carrie.
Yeah, I think I was also at first projecting that onto, I mean, I think it's there, but I
It
think I
definitely
was like
is.
reading like, oh, like how ragey is Stephen King like toward his, I guess nagging bitch of a wife. There's this like
Yeah,
running thing in the book about how, Jack is fed up with all of Wendy's nagging, only sometimes, This is like something that only gets expressed in his moments of rage.
he calls
I
her a
found myself
nag.
being,
Yeah,
I was definitely like judging King in those moments, and I'm pulling back and being like, wait, this is like a character not supposed to like, but I also thought it was interesting that because you do read it as a stand-in for King. So he like put himself in like the, antagonist position essentially, even though I
yeah,
wouldn't say that Jack is necessarily the
right,
actual antagonist of the novel.
right. And it is like you how much you don't want to put so much weight on something like because we are just like projecting, but yeah, uh, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there's always going to be some. Yeah, I don't know. I always
Yeah, I mean, like, what do you think about those scenes when Jack's going crazy?
that was when the story was just humming at full speed for me, and I was just blasting like through that, like
There were
Jack.
spots for him and Danny where I like had to go back and reread because I was like, wait,
Yeah,
what's going on? And sometimes it's like you're kind of just suspended in it and you're not supposed to really, I think, fully grasp what is happening until after the fact when they kind of break it down a little bit for you, which also feels a little bit goofy sometimes.
well, and because I think you're supposed to, because technically I think that's his way of trying to be like the character itself doesn't even realize like this is happening until he's like, running around like with that mallet, like
Yeah, I think the ballroom scenes were interesting,
hmm
which are also pretty famous in the movie, right? Like these
and those
the ballroom drinking scene.
and the ballroom drinking scenes in the book are so pivotal to like Jack's kind of change as a character, like the
Yep.
kind of turning point to the crazy. And like I do think the movie did a pretty good job of shortening those up drastically and just giving us the gist. And there were a few moments with exact lines of dialogue from the book, which I
Yeah, there
appreciate in an adaptation.
There were some moments of that like change when Jack is like going from, you know, kind of out of it to like pretty fucking insane.
Right.
That I don't know if it's just in that shift there, like where he just sort of flips over into full crazy, but I feel like we missed a step, you know?
You mean in the
Like it
movie
almost no,
or
in the
in the
book.
book?
Like I feel like there was like one step closer to it before we went like full crazy
Right.
that we missed. And instead we went from just like kind of like almost crazy to all of a sudden now we're really fully crazy and we're a bad guy.
Yeah, and I think in the beginning of the book there are some hints at like, okay, this is gonna happen, but then
Well, yeah, they keep sort of echoing it over and over again about how he would never hurt his kid, he would never hurt his wife, but
right,
oh, how he wants to, but he would never
right,
do it. He would never hurt his kid, he would never hurt his wife. And like even, how like Wendy is always assuming that if something bad happens to Danny, that it was Jack's fault because of the time that Jack broke his arm.
right.
Um, so like yeah, it echoes through the whole book that's something that he's going to do something.
And that's
And
what
like
I
also with the previous caretaker who also like murdered his family, like I mean that's the biggest
right.
red flag. That's what I mean, like we didn't actually even need that, I don't think. I think I mean it's there, like there could have
Does add
been like
lore, yeah.
something,
And
there could have been
Grady
something slightly more elusive.
Grady does come back like
Yeah.
into the story and matter to like him getting out of the pantry and stuff.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Yeah, that was a whole big thing.
but
Him
yeah,
getting out of the pantry.
that was good. It's a good scene.
I was happy that Dick lived, you know.
Yeah,
I didn't think the ending was like that much happier. Like, I don't think, it was marginally happier than the film.
yeah,
But it could only have been read as like the film could have done the same exact thing and it still would have been eerie because we don't really feel as much toward the characters in the film as we do in the novel.
right.
The novel would still be a happier ending and
But
still only marginally.
yeah, I mean, he's not known for his endings.
Yeah,
I
I don't remember the last lines.
The best ending that I've ever read of his is Pet Cemetery. Again, if you haven't read that, go read that. I think that's his best one. He says that's his scariest, and it is. It's fucking creepy. Creepier than any of the movies make it, which is weird. It's one of those ones that just doesn't translate well.
Wendy sat down on Danny's other side, and the three of them sat on the end of the dock in the afternoon sun. Boring as shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Boring as shit ending.
Is that what separates like what we would call literary from
Uh, I think so.
yeah,
I think so. I think this is like pure entertainment that like has, you know, some shit to say about like family life and like certain values and how, and maybe about human nature, but it's not like a concise like masterpiece on, you know, some deeper part of humanity.
Yeah.
It doesn't have quite the same. I mean, I also think there's like a larger element of beauty that comes into play when we're talking about literature that maybe isn't needed or like isn't the focus of
Right.
pop fiction, you know? Like when you're trying to be entertained, you're not necessarily trying to be put in awe of beauty. And I
Right.
think that's also what a lot of literature aims to do. Or what at least, I mean, you and I were both trained in poetry, and I think maybe that it's possible that's much truer of poetry than it is of fiction.
Yeah. I was sending you those Pauline Kael quotes about her essay on trash art. And yeah, where she just said like, like we need to be careful not to confuse entertainment. Like if we like something that we would call, trash art or popular art, like kind of art that's strictly made to entertain us, give us pleasure in one specific way, like, you know, pro-
Yeah,
like
and it's like sensational. Literally like it latches onto your senses to take you for a wild ride, and that is not how I would describe most literary fiction.
yeah, I mean most literary fiction, I mean, kind of a snooze, man. I mean,
Yeah. But
most
like it's also beautiful and like, has depth, right? But it's definitely, I mean like, you know, I get excited reading like Edith Wharton's ghost stories or even like some of her like sadder stories, even like Ethan Frome, although I had a tough time with that one. I got really ragey reading it.
oh, dude, that's such a heartbreaker. I read that thing in like one day, and it was
That
yeah,
one killed me.
yeah,
But yeah, like it's different I don't know, like a different range of emotions that it evokes in the reader.
that pesky, it's that dividing line.
Yeah, but
That's why I
it's
wonder
there, it's
about like
real.
the constant literary references. I guess you could argue it's character building for the Jack character, but yeah,
Yeah, but I think you're also allowed as like a popular writer to like be someone who's a pop writer aspiring to write the great
right,
American novel,
yeah,
I don't think there's anything actually wrong with that. Like, and essentially, if he wants to define it on his own terms, in some ways he has, and he's done it like, 60 times. I mean, if
yeah,
not the great American writer, the successful one.
right, yeah, that's for sure.
I mean, he's probably getting a lot more for every book than most big hits in the literary field.
Yeah, I mean he just sells more is the thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
actually,
and they know he'll sell
I heard
because
him
people don't
say
read literature.
I heard him say in an interview that he just like doesn't he said at one point like he's just like, look, you don't need to give me like $1 million advance, like you can just give me like 200K and then we'll split the profits or whatever like on the sales. And like, yeah, they're just like, yeah, okay, yeah, because we know it's going to sell 100 million. Yeah. Translated already. Yeah. So he said too, he's like, I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, I admire him.
yeah. I mean, like I said, I really enjoyed this. I'm a slow reader, but for me, I flew through it.
Yeah.
It was fun, except for that one fucking chapter that was boring as shit. The rest of it was fun.
Yeah, and I thought even like that last chapter, like you could have just lopped off that last chapter and it would have been fine ending.
Dude, and yeah, and it's like filled with action. Oh yeah, that
Right.
epilogue, not necessary.
Yeah.
Epilogues often not necessary.
Right.
Especially in pop fiction. I mean, take Harry Potter.
Uh,
God, I even read Twilight. That had one of the most atrocious epilogues I've ever read in my life. It was even worse than Harry Potter.
I've never read Twilight. We should do it for the
Oh
pod.
man. Oh man. Break those books out
Uh,
somewhere in my parents' basement,
yeah, I mean,
covered in dust,
I read Hunger Games. I
covered
read
in dust and shame.
Dust and Shame.
Oh, I left them down there for a reason.
Yeah,
No
dude.
one could know. Yeah, dude, those books were written for little girls just learning how to jerk off.
And I was gonna ask, did the movies make his reputation?
Oh, I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
didn't it?
yeah,
I
that's
mean, well, you probably know more about his history, but I would say like that's why everyone knows his name. Like if I were to ask my students, to name like a horror writer, I think that Stephen King is probably the only one they would come up with. And I don't think a single one of my students has read any of his books or any books.
yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, I mean, I say, yeah, I mean, the movie always sells books, but I mean, in his case, like, it's very particular how it happened to
Well, but
Carrie,
the popularity of the movies is
right,
what did it. Who made Carrie?
De Palma, and it was well
How can you
done.
feel about that?
I mean, it was well done. Like, that's the thing is that the book was kind of a flop until De Palma made the movie,
Yeah.
and then that's when he got his big break, like because
And how big
he
was The Shining, I wonder? Because that came out forever ago, but like the movie was such a big fucking deal
by The
and continues to be
Shining,
such a big deal that it renews his audience in a way that I feel like
I
it
think
wouldn't be without the film.
I think Carrie came out in 74, the novel. The movie was made in 76, which kind of put him on the map. And he wrote, then I think he had like a couple successive hits. So I think he went Carrie, then he did Salem's Lot, and then I think he did Pet Cemetery, and then I think he did The Shining. So I think The Shining was the fourth one. And by that point, he was already like, oh, this guy's putting out hit after hit in the horror genre. So the book probably did well by that point, and it was highly anticipated. Like the movie was very highly anticipated by the time it came out.
Yeah, and I feel like once you have a heavy hitter film like The Shining, that like, even if it hadn't been popular at the time, like has, you know, was it popular at the time? I actually don't know.
Oh yeah, and they put a lot of money behind it too. Like it was,
Yeah, so
yeah,
hugely popular at the time, continues to be really popular now, probably has a massive cult following, and um, will continue to renew his audience year after year
yeah,
for anyone who loves good film, like, because that doesn't really die.
right. Yeah, I mean it's totally
But yeah,
dependent. He even says so himself. Yeah, he's a very humble guy. If you ever like listen to his interviews, I guess he can afford to be. And
but yeah, I would say that his success was in part made by how easily adapted his books are into film,
well, that's
and how
always the
much people
case.
wanted to do
Yeah,
that.
pop,
Everyone's fucking dying for a good horror film. I know
right.
I am.
Yeah, and they don't come around often. Like,
Oh.
but like poppy fiction or pulpy fiction always makes better movies than the literary usually.
Oh yeah.
So like yeah, when you write a poppier book, it's much easier to translate and make a huge hit. Like
Yeah, there's just going to be so much to pick or choose from when you're trying to represent, whatever it is, 300, 400, 500, 600 pages into a film.
right.
Like there's going to be a lot to work with without having to follow every single cue.
That too, and like you just said, like the kind of what separates the two is that this literary genre has a lot of unsaid stuff in it, maybe stuff that's just harder to depict in a visual medium like a movie.
Harder to like also like come off not obnoxious. Like
Right.
sometimes like when
Cheesy.
movies feel like they're almost overly academic in style.
Right.
Like they were written for a bunch of senior seminar film students to sit there and talk about how smart and like layered and intelligent it is and whatever.
Right.
And sometimes that just ends up making it kind of annoying. Like it kind of just makes it terrible to watch.
Yeah.
And I say that as someone who has like fallen victim to this plenty of times.
Yeah. I mean it just yeah. It's more of a entertainment medium in that sense.
Yeah, and literature is more of an I'm intelligent medium. Look at me, I'm smart. I'm smart and I'm talented.
Uh,
I need you to know that.
talented.
I bet Stephen King looks really natural on the can though.
Oh yeah, dude. Oh yeah.
He's just like doubled over, taking a shit and writing pages.
He's hard to look at. Yeah.
His face is,
Yeah.
but somehow on the toilet, I imagine him being just such a natural. He's probably really regular.
Shout out. Shout out to the regulars.
Dude, fuck you.
Regularity.
You know? And if you're not regular, like that's okay too.
Yeah, if you're not regular, we could use Metamucil for all of your irregularity needs.
Yeah, we're gonna have to wrap this up
Give
soon
us
so that I can go do that.
give us a call, Metamucil. Give us a
That shit's expensive.
give us a sponsorship. Yeah, we're already plugging ads, and we're not even sponsored. See, we're it's totally worth it.
Yeah, this man takes like 25 pills a day.
Make it sound like I'm a drug addict or something. Pills,
Them fiber pills.
fiber supplement. Is horror better with sad endings,
I think horror is better with better endings. I don't think I don't think it has to be sad.
or
And
like a
yet it just gets
disturbing?
happy. And then we were sitting there on the dock, just looking off into the sunset. You know, I mean, I think sometimes a little bit of ambiguity does an ending some good in
Yeah,
some cases, not always, but a little left to be imagined.
imagined. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think a little too happy is a little too much. I think any book that ends a little too happy is a little too much.
Yeah, and I think that's another one of his problems is that he does do this kind of very dad energy. Like,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
exactly how I
yeah.
describe it.
It's very
Very
like
dad endings.
and
It's the
like
same energy of the sex scenes.
dad jokes. Like the jokes are very like
Dad energy sex.
yeah. Dad energy. Yeah, dude. Fucking
Dad energy nipple play.
I like the sad I like the sadder, more disturbing ending for a horror. Like
Well,
I'm
yeah.
fine with the
Watch horror
trope.
be disturbed.
Yeah, I'm fine with like the easy ending of everybody dies. Like I'm usually fine with that as long as it's well done. I'm just like, oh yeah, kill them all. Like, yeah, make this shit horrific. Make this
Yeah, I
ever
was
horrific.
surprised they didn't kill Halloran. That
Yeah,
definitely would have made for a much sadder ending.
yeah,
And it was like there was this moment at the end of toward the end where where Wendy's just like, he's dead. This place killed my husband. He's not him anymore. And she's just like so matter of fact about it.
yeah,
Like all of a sudden, again, like there's a moment where it's like that shift to her realization was too abrupt. And so abrupt that it felt goofy.
yeah. I guess at that point he did try to kill her, and she gets pretty beat up in the book.
Yeah, but to just say matter of factly, no, it's not my husband, leave him
Right.
to blow up. Just leave him
Yeah,
to die. He's dead to me already.
something you could only get
I
away
think
with.
that's pretty wild.
Yeah, you could only get away with it in like a pop fiction type.
Yeah, I feel like he could have gone a little more complex there. But yeah, I you know, it was good. I think the ending was lackluster, but that one chapter really just you could rip it out.
That and
You could rip that chapter out, but
I guess they kill Holleran in the movie.
yeah, they do. Well, Jack kills Halloran in the
Right.
movie.
Axe to the chest. The
Yep.
axe was a nice touch too, instead of the
Yeah,
mallet.
different murder weapon.
Yeah,
An axe is visually much scarier than a roque mallet.
yeah.
That also felt very like New England of
It,
King.
yeah.
There's a lot of really yeah, it's just so easy to picture certain like elite New England like white boy sports and roke.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is.
It's like croquet.
Yeah, I guess. Or is it like cricket?
I don't fucking know. I just assumed that was also like croquet.
I mean, I guess it is.
If it's a mallet, they're like kind of all the same to me.
God, dude, hopefully we don't have any like British overseas listeners that actually like know what this is,
Yeah, I'm sure they do, you know.
or New Englanders.
I don't play sports or watch them.
Uh,
So sue me.
I am too American to know anything about. Like I barely know anything about hockey.
Yeah, I just don't care.
I just know the American Empire, the big three: baseball, basketball, football.
Do not care.
My last question was, do you think the book or the movie is better?
Oh man. God, that's tough because it's been so long since I first watched the movie. And when I first watched the movie, I remember being like blown away.
Shame,
I
yeah.
think I watched it in like eighth grade or seventh or eighth grade, and I was like, Jesus Christ,
Shame.
that's a fucking movie. And yeah, it's like really different because also like having some familiarity with the story, it's hard to tell. There are things about the book that I definitely like. I don't know. I enjoyed being along for the longer ride of it. I enjoyed the sort of having a deeper understanding of the characters, not dealing with Wendy's crying.
Yeah, I think if I had to, if I was,
If I
it's,
wanted to be afraid, the movie. But if I wanted to be entertained for a long time, the book.
yeah, I, if I was pressed, like if somebody was forcing me to say one or the other, I would say I think the movie's better.
Yeah, I mean, artistically, it's probably like a better overall
It took the best parts.
achievement.
Yeah, it took the best parts. I was also thinking as I was rewatching the movie for this podcast, dude, and I was, taking notes on it for the first time, and I fucking watched it, and it was like, I was struck by like, man, like they took the story and just made it like elevated it to
A
like,
lot.
yeah,
Not the characters, but the overall story.
I think Jack's death is better in the book. I think that it was kind of lackluster in the movie.
I like that in the book they give him a little moment of redemption.
Yeah.
Like he lets Dan like he, you know, sort of has Danny and lets Danny get away and like understands that he's like gonna die in that moment, but then sort of, you know, it ends for him pretty quickly
Right.
thereafter.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
also like essentially like he kills himself in the book.
Basically. But he's not trying to.
Well, but isn't he at the no, like he dies before his body does, is the sense that I got in the book. Like he brings the mallet down on his own head
Uh,
as like a final blow to kill himself. So like he actually takes the mallet to himself.
yeah, man. Wild, wild shit.
Yeah, but isn't that a fucking weird thing? And I guess in the book also like the other thing that's weird is like after Jack actually dies, like his face is sort of taken over by the hotel. Like his face stops being his face, which is weird.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of strange imagery in the novel that doesn't happen um in the movie, but I think in the movie it has better imagery to suit.
The one thing the movie does, I think, that is probably one of the creepiest parts of the movie is when Shelley Duvall or Wendy finds the novel he's been writing.
Oh yeah.
And like I guess because I saw the movie first, I kept waiting for that to happen in the book, and it didn't happen. And I was like, oh wait, they added that. Like, and I think that is one line in the book that Jack says to himself, like, "All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy."
Yeah, the funny thing is like he does actually finish his play that he went there to work on.
Right.
Like he does say like, "Oh yeah, I finished that." Yeah, so there's some creepy shit that didn't come from the book that is pretty genius in the film. Um, Book overall, again, really fun read. I enjoyed it. Shit ending, one really boring chapter, but overall, I mean, good, fun, punchy little read.
Right. That's what I was thinking too. Like the when I was watching it, rewatching it, I was like, oh fuck, like I don't remember a time or like more recently even when a horror novel like this gets this kind of auteur kind of director and this fucking Oscar winner to
Oh yeah.
star as the lead and like gets given all this money, this huge budget to be made, and like we get like this, auteur filmmaker Kubrick, and then we get Nicholson off his Oscar win for Cuckoo's Nest, and they create one of the most iconic horror films ever made. I mean, I guess that's the formula right there. That's the formula.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Great movie. Pretty good book.
The Elevator of
Although I
Blood.
still maintain, like, I was really entertained by the book in a way that you can't be by the movie. And I mean,
Right.
that's just true of books.
Yeah, books are
Yeah.
different. Yeah, it's immersive. I think
Yeah.
movies try to capture that, but it's hard to do because books are immersive in this way that movies can never be.
God. Stephen King as a young man, even.
Yeah. God.
Really just hideous. Always gotta look him up as a young man, you know? Try to give him a shot.
I've never seen him before his like beard stage.
Oh, well, here you go.
Oh God. Let's see if he sent me
Yeah.
the pic. Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah.
Ugly as shit.
Yeah. And I remember when he first came out. I mean, he was incredibly controversial.
Oh,
Yeah.
look at that. It's incredible to me every time I see a picture of him.
Yeah.
You look like this is a man who looks like an animal.
Yeah, dude. Oh man, fucking King, Stephen fucking King, dude. God, I feel like I guess we talked more about the movie than we did the book, but yeah, I mean, there's
I
not a
mean, we talked about them both about
yeah,
equally.
there's really, like I said, it's not that deep. It's not that.
I mean, listen, we'll make up for it next time when we talk about Keats.
Yeah, fuck yeah. I guess yeah. Any other thoughts on this stuff? On The Shining, book or movie, King?
I'm really glad that the book doesn't have him talking to his fucking finger. I think that would have pissed me off. Although like now I'm really curious to see how King would have made that work.
Yeah. I guess you could do voiceover. There was some of the voiceover they did in the movie with between like Halloran and Danny. They just did like voiceover.
And I do think, it is funny that I found myself being really judgmental of Stephen King based on the character of Jack, because that was probably unwarranted.
Yeah.
I think that, like, that's another thing that we tend to do a lot with writers, to project the values of their, like, evil characters onto them. But yeah, man, and there the three of them sat on the dock in the afternoon sunset.
Yeah.
Yeah, my copy of the book also has like the first handful of pages of Doctor Sleep. I haven't read them
Yeah.
called it quits after the epilogue. I was like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah, he wrote it, so much later. It is a lot. Doctor Sleep is a little slower. Yeah, sequels like this written many years later. Usually it's bad news. Yeah,
Yeah.
usually. All right. Yeah. No other thoughts on this. If you want to contact us, you can contact us at heavyboardpodcast@gmail.com. Also, a reminder to listeners, we're interested in workshop horror stories. If you have some type of horror story that you experienced or a story you want to share about a workshop experience in any art form, let us know.
Yeah, we want to hear your dirty laundry.
Yeah.
And then we want to air it.
Air it out to dry. Only way to clean it. Yeah, you can send us those at heavyboardpodcast@gmail.com as well. Subscribe to our Patreon. Receive full uncensored episodes for subscribers only, as well as bonus materials, interviews. Check out our YouTube channels. Subscribe for more. Links to all the books and shit in the description. And as Sophie said, next week we are doing the complete poems of John Keats. It's going to be a doozy, Soph.
Yeah, and if you or someone you know has said dumb shit in a writing class, again, we want to
know. The copy that we have of Keats, I will link that below. We do have, it's kind of like a digi-read.
Print on demand.
Yeah, print on demand. I'm not thrilled about that, but it is affordable, and it does have his complete works.
Yeah, and it has a pretty funny introduction.
But also, introduction by Robert Bridges. But it's also, I guess we'll talk about this next week, or next episode. I need to go into it now. But yeah, get yourself a copy of that. We're going to go into it. Damn, that's like, what is that, 500 pages?
We'll see how far we get.
450 pages of Keats. All right. This has been Heavy Board. My name is Andrew Whitstop.
And I'm Sophie Weiner.
And I guess we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Or you won't.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy
Bored.
I may say that the male is entirely hostile. No! Dinner.
Resources.
Life, friends, is boring. We must not say so. Are you radioactive now?
Inner.
Resources, American resources.
Being bored?
Some activities are intentional, right?
It shows such a lack
Heavy.
of gratitude for life. Bored. I aspire to boredom,
Heavy.
I should say.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy
Bored.
Has you the night sweats and the day sweats, pal? Pal, I do.